In every person's life, there comes a moment when the world becomes too loud. The noise of opinions, responsibilities, failures, expectations, and past mistakes begins to fill the inner space where peace once lived. You start waking up tired, not because your body lacks rest, but because your mind has been negotiating with the world all night. The noise of the world does not always arrive in the form of loud sounds or chaotic environments. Most of the time, it enters quietly through subtle expectations, silent comparisons, and the constant feeling that you must become someone else to be worthy. This noise can be invisible, yet it shapes your thoughts, influences your choices, and slowly pulls you away from the center of who you really are. It is the pressure to meet society's standards, the fear of disappointing others, and the habit of looking outward for validation instead of inward for truth. When you live surrounded by these external voices for too long, something begins to change within you. You stop listening to your own intuition because the world's opinions drown it out. You stop trusting your own decisions because the judgments of others feel louder than your inner guidance. You may not even notice when it begins. But gradually, the noise becomes your new normal. This noise manifests as confusion, self-doubt, and emotional fatigue. It becomes difficult to hear your own thoughts because they are tangled with the expectations of everyone around you. Even when you try to be still, the mind continues replaying conversations, imagining criticisms, or worrying about future mistakes. You start waking up with anxiety that does not come from your own life, but from absorbing the stress of those around you. The noise convinces you that you must constantly do more, achieve more, and prove more. It never gives you a moment of silence to ask yourself what you genuinely want. Instead, it pushes you into a life that may look successful on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. As the noise gets stronger, it affects your identity. You start shaping yourself based on how you want others to perceive you, instead of who you truly are. You become reactive instead of intentional, always responding to the world's demands, rather than acting from your own clarity. There is a difference between living a life built from your core and living a life built from pressure. When the noise takes over, you forget this difference. You move through each day on autopilot, driven by responsibilities, digital distractions, and social expectations. You no longer pause to ask, is this truly me? Because the noise does not allow space for such questions. This disconnection from yourself is subtle, but powerful. It shows up in feelings of being lost, lacking direction, or constantly seeking reassurance. You begin to rely on external voices to tell you who you should be, what you should do, and how you should feel. The world's noise becomes louder than your inner wisdom, and in this imbalance, you lose the sense of your own path. When the external world becomes your compass, your internal world becomes silent, not in a peaceful way, but in a suppressed way. You feel disconnected from your passions, your purpose, and even your emotional truth. And this is how the world's noise slowly distances you from the most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. Peace is often treated like a destination, something you must chase, earn, or discover after achieving certain goals or fixing every problem in your life. People travel to distant places, read countless books, or try to perfect their outer circumstances, hoping that peace will finally appear. But real peace does not come from changing the world around you. It comes from noticing what has always been within you. It is a return, not a discovery. The more you chase it outside yourself, the further you move away from your own center. The quieter you become internally, the more you realize that peace was never missing. It was simply covered by layers of fear, pressure, overthinking, and emotional clutter. From a young age, you carry impressions from experiences, conversations, failures, and unresolved emotions. These impressions settle like dust on the surface of your mind. Over time, the dust becomes thicker, and eventually, you cannot clearly see through it. You assume peace is gone, but in reality, the dust only needs to be removed. The returning process begins when you stop adding more layers and start observing what is already there. You begin to notice the difference between the noise of the mind and the wisdom of your inner self. Peace reveals itself in this awareness, not because it suddenly appears, but because you finally stop looking in the wrong direction. Many people believe peace is achieved when life becomes perfect, when relationships stabilize, when finances improve, or when circumstances fall neatly into place. But peace does not depend on external perfection. There are people who have everything and feel restless, and people who have very little but feel deeply centered. The difference lies in where they search. If you constantly look outward, your peace will always fluctuate. If you learn to look inward, peace becomes steady, like a quiet flame that does not go out, even when the wind blows. When you understand that peace is something you return to, your relationship with life changes. Challenges lose their ability to control you, and success no longer becomes the only source of happiness. Returning to peace means returning to presence. It means paying attention to the breath entering your body, the sensations rising and falling, the thoughts passing like clouds. It means noticing what your mind is holding on to, not to judge it, but to release what no longer serves you. This inner returning is not passive. It is an intentional choice to reconnect with yourself again and again throughout the day. Even in moments of stress or uncertainty, there is a silent space within you that remains untouched. You begin to realize that peace does not disappear. It gets buried under the activity of the mind. When you reduce the inner noise, even slightly, you feel the natural calm that has been waiting underneath. Every time you return to your breath, every time you pause, every time you choose awareness over reaction, you move closer to this inner home. You rediscover the simplicity of just being, without labels, without expectations, without pressure to perform. In that simplicity, peace lives. It does not demand achievement or perfection. It only requires presence. The more you learn to return to yourself, the more you understand that peace is not a reward. It is your nature. Silence is often misunderstood as a lack of activity, a void, or an empty space where nothing meaningful happens. But in reality, silence is one of the most powerful tools for inner alignment. When you step away from the constant movement of the world, something subtle but profound begins to shift within you. The mind, which is usually busy analyzing, comparing, judging, and imagining, finally has room to settle. In this settling, you start to see things as they truly are, not as your fears or assumptions project them to be. Silence reveals truth because it removes the distractions that distort your perception. Most people avoid silence because it confronts them with themselves. The moment the noise fades, unresolved emotions, suppressed thoughts, and forgotten memories rise to the surface. This is why silence feels uncomfortable for many. It becomes a mirror showing everything you've been running from. But this confrontation is not something to fear. It is a necessary part of returning to your inner balance. When you learn to sit with your thoughts without pushing them away or getting overwhelmed by them, you develop the strength to understand your inner world instead of being controlled by it. In silence, the mind slows down enough for you to recognize patterns you never noticed before. You start to see how often your thoughts drift into worry or how frequently you revisit old mistakes. You become aware of how much of your emotional energy is consumed by things that do not truly matter. This awareness is the beginning of alignment. It allows you to separate what belongs to you from what was imposed on you by others. You understand which fears originate from your own experiences and which were borrowed from the opinions or expectations of the world. Silence brings clarity by removing the layers of noise that disguise themselves as urgency or importance. The body also responds to silence. When your internal dialogue softens, your breathing deepens, your muscles relax, and your nervous system begins to reset itself. The tension you carry unconsciously starts to loosen, making space for calm and stability. This physical relaxation is not just comfort. It is communication. It is your body aligning with the mind, sending the message that you are safe, present, and grounded. When mind and body enter this agreement, you experience a sense of wholeness that external achievements could never provide. Silence also teaches you to listen. Truly listen. Not just to the world around you, but to your intuition, your emotions, and your natural rhythm. You begin to recognize when something drains your energy or when something feels aligned with your purpose. You start to trust your inner voice because you've given it space to speak. In this trust, confidence grows, not the loud confidence that tries to impress, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing yourself deeply. The more time you spend in silence, even small pockets throughout the day, the more you realize that it is not emptiness at all. It is fullness. It is understanding. It is alignment. It is the space where your most honest thoughts rise, your deepest wisdom becomes accessible, and the distractions of the world lose their power over you. Silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can return again and again to reconnect with the core of who you are. The present moment is the only place where your life is actually happening, yet it is the place you visit the least. most people spend their days living in two illusions, the past and the future. The past pulls you with memories, regrets, and old wounds that the mind refuses to release. The future pulls you with worries, expectations, and imagined outcomes that may never become real. In this constant movement between what has already ended and what has not yet arrived, the present moment, the only moment where clarity exists, gets ignored. And when you lose connection with the present, you lose connection with yourself. Being in the present moment does not simply mean sitting still or paying attention to your surroundings. It means becoming fully aware of what is happening within you right now. The thoughts you are thinking, the emotions rising inside your chest, the sensations moving through your body. It means recognizing that this moment holds everything you need to understand yourself without the distortions of memory or fear. In the present, you see things clearly. You see your reactions, your desires, your pain, and your strength with honesty. Nothing is exaggerated or hidden by the mind's stories. This clarity is what allows you to return to your true self. When you live trapped in the past, you become a prisoner of experiences that no longer exist. You carry the weight of situations that have already ended, repeating them in your mind as if reliving them could change something. But every time you return to those old moments, you disconnect from the person you are becoming. The past tries to define you with old beliefs and outdated versions of who you once were. The present moment frees you from that. It reminds you that you are not your memories. You are the awareness that observes them. The future, on the other hand, pulls you forward with anxiety and expectations. You imagine scenarios, outcomes, and problems that may never come true, and your mind reacts to them as if they are already happening. This creates stress, fear, and confusion. The more you live in the future, the more you drain your energy on illusions. You begin to believe that your happiness will come one day, once you achieve something or once circumstances improve. But that one day never arrives, because every day your attention is somewhere else. The present moment teaches you that what you become in the future depends entirely on how you show up right now. The breath is the simplest way to reconnect with the present. Each inhale brings you into your body. Each exhale grounds you into reality. When you follow your breath, even for a few seconds, the noise of the mind softens and you return to the space where life truly exists. In this presence, you realize that peace is accessible, clarity is possible, and strength is available. The present moment is not small or insignificant. It is powerful. It is where transformation happens, where change begins, and where your true identity reveals itself without interruption. When you train your mind to stay in the present more often, even during stressful situations, you become less reactive and more intentional. You respond instead of reacting because you are not operating based on old wounds or imagined fears. You are rooted in what is real. And in that reality, you rediscover yourself. Not the version shaped by the past or the version worried about the future, but the version that exists right now, fully alive and fully aware. Discipline is often misunderstood as something harsh or restrictive, but in reality, it is one of the deepest forms of self-respect. It is the decision to protect your mind, your energy, and your inner clarity from anything that tries to pull you away from yourself. In a world filled with endless distractions, constant notifications, and emotional noise, discipline becomes the gatekeeper that decides what enters your inner space. Without it, your mind becomes a place where everything and everyone has access. Every opinion, every fear, every comparison, every doubt. But with discipline, you begin to consciously choose what deserves your attention and what does not. Finding yourself again requires courage because it often demands that you step away from habits that feel comfortable but are silently draining you. It requires honesty to look at the things in your life that create internal noise. Certain people, certain environments, certain behaviors, and even certain thoughts. Discipline is the process of recognizing these disturbances and having the strength to step back from them. You begin to ask yourself, who am I without these distractions? What do I feel when the noise fades? What remains when I no longer run from silence? The answers to these questions can be uncomfortable, but they are necessary for transformation. Cutting off external noise sometimes means creating distance from people who constantly demand your energy but never contribute to your peace. It means reducing the time spent on social media, where comparison becomes the fuel for insecurity. It means setting boundaries, not because you are selfish, but because your inner world matters just as much as any responsibility you carry. External discipline creates space where you can breathe, think, reflect, and realign your path. But the harder part is internal discipline, because the loudest noise is not around you, it is inside you. Internal discipline means becoming aware of the repetitive thoughts that weaken your spirit. It means noticing when your mind begins to spiral into worry, self-criticism, or overthinking, and gently bringing it back to the present. It is the ability to observe your emotions without letting them dictate your actions. It is the decision to no longer entertain every fear that appears in your mind, no longer believe every negative narrative, and no longer give power to the stories that keep you small. Internal discipline is the quiet strength of saying, choose what I focus on. Even when the mind tries to pull you into chaos, there will always be noise, people talking, responsibilities increasing, problems appearing, emotions rising. You cannot remove all of it, but you can train yourself to not be controlled by it. You build discipline through small actions, taking intentional pauses during the day, giving yourself moments of silence, practicing awareness of your breath, and refusing to surrender your peace to temporary situations. Over time, these small acts form a strong inner foundation. You begin to feel that you are no longer moved by every disturbance or influenced by every external wave. Discipline becomes the bridge between losing yourself and finding yourself again. It becomes the force that helps you choose clarity over confusion, presence over distraction, and inner peace over external approval. Through discipline, you learn to protect your inner world And in protecting it, you finally begin to reconnect with who you are beyond the noise. Clarity is not simply understanding what you want. It is the alignment of your mind, body, and actions moving in the same direction. When the noise within you becomes quiet and the inner fog begins to clear, you start to see your life with a sharpness that feels both powerful and peaceful. You recognize what matters and what does not. You understand which goals come from your true self and which were adopted from society or other people's expectations. This clarity becomes a guiding light, and for the first time, your decisions begin to feel intentional rather than reactive. You move not out of fear or pressure, but out of purpose. When clarity enters your life, your energy stops scattering. Before clarity, your mind may have been pulled in different directions. Part of you wanting one thing, another part wanting something else, and another part afraid to take action at all. This inner conflict creates hesitation and exhaustion. But when the noise fades, the fragments of your attention come together. Your inner world becomes organized. You begin to feel a sense of inner unity, as if the different parts of you finally agree on the same path. This alignment gives you strength because every step you take is supported by your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical actions working together. Clarity also makes your boundaries stronger. When you know who you are and what you stand for, it becomes easier to say no to things that pull you off your path. You no longer feel guilty for protecting your energy because you understand that every unnecessary commitment steals time from the life you are trying to build. You recognize which relationships nourish your spirit and which ones drain it. You can feel when an environment supports your growth or when it slows you down. This awareness is not judgment. It is self-respect. It is the understanding that your time, your peace, and your purpose deserve protection. One of the most transformative aspects of clarity is how it influences your emotional world. When you align with your true self, your emotions become more stable. You no longer react impulsively to situations because you are no longer battling inner chaos. You respond from a place of calm understanding. You can observe your emotions without becoming lost in them. You recognize that feelings are temporary visitors, not permanent truths. This emotional clarity allows you to navigate challenges with patience and perspective. Problems still arise, but you face them with the confidence of someone who is grounded in who they are. Clarity also ignites creativity and motivation. When your inner world is aligned, ideas flow more naturally. You feel inspired, not because you are trying to impress others, but because you are expressing your authentic self. Your actions carry a sense of purpose, and this purpose fuels your effort. Even difficult tasks become easier because they feel meaningful. The resistance that once held you back begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet determination. You no longer need constant motivation from the outside. The drive comes from within. In the end, clarity transforms the way you live, the way you think, and the way you move through the world. It gives you direction, stability, and confidence. It removes the hesitation that once kept you stuck. And as your mind, body and actions become aligned, you step into a version of yourself that feels natural, calm, and deeply powerful. In the end, the journey of stopping the noise and finding yourself again is not about escaping the world, but about returning to the deepest part of yourself with new awareness. Life will continue to move. People will continue to speak. Circumstances will continue to change. But your inner world does not have to be shaken by every movement around you. When you learn to quiet the noise, to breathe with presence, to protect your energy with discipline, and to listen to the wisdom that rises from silence, you rediscover a strength that was never truly lost. You begin to live from clarity instead of confusion, from alignment instead of pressure. Finding yourself is not a one-time achievement. It is a daily practice. It is the commitment to show up for yourself even when the world tries to pull you away. It is the choice to choose inner peace over external chaos again and again. And with every small step, you return more deeply to the truth of who you are. Calm, aware, grounded, and connected. When the noise fades, when your true voice emerges. When your true voice emerges, your path becomes clear. And when your path becomes clear, you no longer seek yourself. You live as yourself. This is the real beginning of your transformation.